Welcome back to Conversations with Boston School Psychologists, building safe and supportive schools one conversation at a time, where we spotlight the people, practices, and partnerships behind behavioral health in Boston Public Schools. I'm here with our Senior Director of Behavioral Health Services, Dr. Andria Amador, and today we're excited to welcome Dr. Amber Harris. Dr. Harris received her PhD in school psychology from Texas Tech University. She is currently an assistant professor at the Louisiana State University, Shreveport. She has worked as a school psychologist for 15 years in school districts in northern Louisiana. Her areas of interest are autism, trauma, behavioral RTI-MTSS, and fidelity in implementing the PBIS framework. She enjoys being an active member of her state and national associations, advocating for all youth and the profession of school psychology. She is also a moderator of the most well-known Facebook forum for school psychologists, known as Said No School Psychologist Ever. Amber, thank you so much for joining us today. It's good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And so let's get started with our first question. So first, let's just hear a little bit more about your story. How did you become a school psychologist?
I became a school psychologist because I grew up very closely to with an aunt and a cousin that had Down syndrome. And my aunt growing up, I watched her navigate a school system that did not have systems of support in place for him. She actually became a volunteer paraprofessional so that he could go to school. Because this is, back in the day, they were encouraging him to go to a state school. And so growing up, this was just my normal to see somebody work through systems and create systems change. And then also that diversity in human experience, that was my norm too. I grew up thinking everybody has a cousin like Dallas, right? So growing up around that, and then whenever I did go to college, I had a plan, you guys. I was going to be a nurse, thinking I had this whole, life mapped out for me. And I fell in love with my psychology professors and those classes. And so I ended up taking a professor named Flint Smith. So I want to give a shout out to Flint Smith. He is now retired, but he was a practicing school psychologist. Taught my abnormal psych class, and he'd come in every week with some wild story from his job. And I really didn't understand what he did, but I thought, I don't know what this is, but whatever it is, sign me up. I want to be part of this because he's never boring. His job seems like it's never boring, and he gets to help all of these kids. So that is how I became a school psychologist.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, kudos to him. We're lucky to have you in the field because you've been doing a lot of advocacy both at the state level and the national level, as well as moderating a Facebook forum, which is now, 25,000 school psychologists, maybe 30,000? Just incredible.
We're at 25,600. So
incredible.
An accurate count.
And so that is the biggest, most popular Facebook forum. And so you are kind of taking a leadership role in a lot of different ways, both at NASP and through this Facebook forum. And so we just wanted to know a little bit more about the advocacy you're doing and the leadership roles you've taken as a school psychologist.
So how I got involved with that, or why I feel like that is such an important support for our field, is my first 4 years as a school psychologist. And I do mean including my internship here. I was the only school psychologist in my district. I worked in a tiny little district called Bienville Parish in northern Louisiana, and we only had about 2,600 students across 8 schools. And we had to have a retired school psychologist who lived in an adjacent area to come in and provide me supervision so I could even work there because there was no other school psychologist. I know personal experience, and even working in other districts where I did have other school sites in the district, you're often the only person in the building that is you, right? So you're the only school psychologist in your building. So we work, sometimes it feels like on these little islands. And isolation can be tough. Whenever somebody doesn't get exactly why we do the things that we do or why we have to do them the way that we do them, they don't get our ethics or always understand our best practices. So I stumbled very early in my career on Said No Schools Like Ever, which a lot of people don't realize the current administrators of that page, we didn't start it. It was a graduate student out of Kentucky who
Wow.
started it as a class project because their professor said, one day you're not going to be here in class together and you're not going to have this immediate connection, but you need to stay connected because you're going to need to support one another in this field. We need one another. And so the professor gave this student an assignment to create some kind of way of how are you going to stay connected once you leave the program. And she created a Facebook page because, of course, this was also back in the day when Facebook was, I think, the height of social media. And it grew to about 2,000 people. It got a little bit bigger than what one person, especially an early career practitioner at the time, could handle. And so she, wanted to hand it over. So there was about 5 of us in the beginning. Someone from California, North Carolina, New York, Louisiana, and Utah that volunteered that said, hey, we'll take it over and manage it. And I think it was really because we all felt that isolation sometimes in our jobs. So we knew how important having this little corner on social media was for people so that they could have access to colleagues. And from
Absolutely.
there, now we've grown to 25,600 and have membership not just in the United States, but actually all over the world. We have a little pocket in Australia. We have Canadian school psychologists. We have school psychs that are in American schools abroad. So it's become a very interesting learning experience for me too to see how practice is in other areas.
Absolutely. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. So the Said No School Psychologist Facebook forum is such a great forum for community supports. If you are a school psychologist, absolutely check it out. And Andria, this kind of correlates with Boston Public Schools initiatives to help support school psychologists, as well as a viable communication tool of getting the word out. And so, do you want to expand about how Boston Public Schools supports their early career school psychologists, as well as uses things like communication tools to get out the great work we're doing through things like the website, through things like fact sheets, journal articles, and including now this podcast? Go ahead, Andria.
I'll start with how do we support students and early career staff. So we are very lucky. We're the largest training program in New England for school psychologists students. So we have 50 university students each year that we support, from pre-prac, prac, intern to doctoral level students. And we're the only APICT approved site to train doctoral level school psychologists in the state. So we're really excited and very committed about our university training program. That also is our number one most important workforce development strategy. So if you were to go into our staff meeting and say, raise your hand if you were an intern here, more than 40% of our team would raise their hand because we help train them and then we hire them. And so that in and of itself helps both students and early career folks because you're starting your first job in a place that's not brand new to you, that you've been there before. We also really spend a great deal of time and commitment to creating a positive community in our department. So we, as admin, we think we were all school psychologists. Our entire central admin team were BPS school psychologists before we became admin. So we know what it's like to walk in those shoes. And we treat others the way we want to be treated. We also advocate incredible amounts so that the school psychologists, both early, all of them, early career, have what they need to do their job well. And for early career people, that's really means a lot of mentoring and training. And so with the federal grant, we are one of the few districts in the nation that received the Workforce Development Grant. Sadly, it's been discontinued. But for the last 3 years, it's allowed us to ensure that every new staff member who's been in the field less than 3 years has a mentor for the entire year who's a veteran school psychologist. So like Amber said, you can often be in a building by yourself, but you're never in the district alone. We have staff meetings where we focus on culture and climate. We have PD. We do over 100 hours of PD each year for school psychologists. Some of it's in the staff meetings together as a group. We do 90 hours. And then outside of that, we have PD opportunities that people can choose what area that they're looking to grow on. And so that allows them to both get the PD they need as an early career person, but then also have that mentoring. And then the third thing that helps both create community and helps with early career is having professional learning communities. So in addition to the PD, all of our school psychs meet once a month in smaller professional learning communities, and that's their opportunity to take the content they learned in PD, put it into practice in the field, and then come back and ask questions and get tips and support from their peers, because we know that you can't sit and get and change practice. You need to go do it, get some consultant support, go back and try it again. And so both those ideas around PD and mentoring and support go together to help new career school psychologists. And our interns are invited to everything we do. So we don't have one group of things for school psychs and the interns aren't invited. So if you're in the district, you get to do any of the trainings we do, you get the materials we get, the books we get, and you get to see the speakers. So students get to be really integrated from the beginning.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Thank you, Andrea. And Amber, I think this would be a good segue into how Said No School Psychologist Ever, the Facebook forum, supports their school psychologists. If you could give some examples of that.
There's been a lot over the past decade since we've been managing this. We have done fundraisers for natural disasters that have happened across the country. I think last I checked, we're close to about $30,000 in funds that's been raised for different natural disaster initiatives from California to the East Coast to, of course, my home state, Louisiana, and my neighbor in Texas. And usually those funds will go to support actual school psychologists. So we know there's a lot of different initiatives out there whenever you have a disaster to support the community. But these are things like we've done mini grants to help replace materials in schools that have been flooded, things like that. It amazes me how often someone will get on there and say, hey, I need a consult and someone that is familiar with Urdu or, some language that you may not have an interpreter, you may not have a bilingual school psych in your area or even in your state that speaks that language. I know that's really important in Boston because I know y'all have more languages than any other district in the country, if I remember that correctly. Is that right, Andria?
Yeah, that was stated at one point. Yeah.
So, yep. A lot of diversity there in your linguistically diverse students. And so that's just one example. We do try to promote anything that NASP puts out. The page is its own entity. So it is not NASP, even though, I moderate the page, but then I'm also involved in NASP. But we do support anything that our national association puts out, any kind of resources, position statements, anything like that comes out of NASP. And then beyond that, it's really just important to find your community, to go commiserate with people that get it, that you can complain about how long it takes to get the rating scales back. And, and people understand that. They have that similar experience.
Absolutely. I love all those big things, but there's also just very creative little things like these weekly check-ins with Carmen every Friday night to see how all these school psychologists are doing. And I think that's a very creative tie-in to the behavior check-in, check-out intervention that school psychologists do all the time. And now it's, time for us to have a weekly check-in as well. And so I just feel like there's just so many supportive school psychologists on there, and it's a very good, positive atmosphere that you have created. And so kudos to you on.
Yeah, we really tried. I do. It's funny how the check-in, check-out has just become part of our culture because my best friend is also a school psychologist. Our kids go to school together at the same high school. They're on the drum line together. And we were together last week tailgating, but we had a rare Thursday night game. And Laura even leaned over at one point. She's like, here, take a selfie with me because we got to have our check-in, check-out picture for the week. So it's like we had to plan it on Thursday. So we had our check-in, check-out, that's
Yep.
just become part of your weekly routine. And then we also have like the self-care reminders on Sundays.
Mhm. That's right. Self-care Sundays.
And that's just a weekly reminder. I do want to emphasize that it doesn't mean that self-care only occurs on Sundays. I hope that all of the people in our field take a few minutes for that each day. But it's good to have a regular reminder that we do need to prioritize our self-care.
Absolutely, to be sustainable in the field, for sure. And Andrea, how do you help your school psychologists in the Boston Public Schools prioritize self-care?
Yeah. Well, as Amber was talking, it makes me reflect on both that professional support people need, but then the more personal support. And our central team just did a great leadership training. And one of the takeaway messages that resonated with me was connection before content. We really have to connect with people before we can teach them something. And so I think one thing our department really tries to do is connect. We have 105 school psychologists, so that is a larger department when you're together. But we do several things to hopefully help them care for themselves. And one of them is our Sunshine Committee. And that's 2 school psychs that volunteer. Folks donate money, and throughout the year, we celebrate. We celebrate each other for important events like babies and weddings. We support each other during times of grief. We also have scheduled activities. We celebrate School Psych Week. Everyone gets gifts. So we really just try to connect. For example, we ask everyone to send us pictures for the summer so that we can start our first staff meeting of the year with seeing, the folks' fun things they did over the summer. So that Sunshine Committee really tries to do creative things. So going to a Red Sox game as a group, going out for drinks after work as a group. And some of the events are smaller, but it's a way to get people to connect first. And then at the professional level, we always dedicate December to self-care month. So we do monthly PD as a whole department, but December is always focused on self-care. So we've had people teach us how to do yoga, how to do mindfulness. We learned how different activities and fun things you could do in your life to bring moments of joy, like Amber mentioned. So that's a professional thing we do. But the other thing that we've tried to do is something we also received in a training, and it was called what's the pebble in your shoe? So as a school psych, we all have things that are small but bothering us every day. They make it difficult for us to walk through our day every day. And it's our job as leaders to take that pebble out of the shoe, to kind of address those barriers that are making it a difficult job for school psychs. And we try to do that. And that could be from big things like advocating for ratios and making sure we have enough school psychs so that their workload is manageable. It can be from giving them the resources they need. When I started, we were given one test kit, and that was it. We didn't have any office supplies. We didn't have any games, any counseling materials, any fidgets. We had nothing. Lamps, lights, laptops, nothing. And so now we seek funding, external funding, so that school psychs have wonderful offices full of enriching materials. And though that is for students, it also supports the school psych, so they feel like they have a community, they have the resources they need. And On social media, we've been sharing some videos of people's offices as they started the year to share their kind of material. So I think it's that continuum from that. How do we personally connect and support them and celebrate them and who they are as individuals, their culture, their religions, their families? And then how do we support them professionally?
Absolutely. That's a very multifaceted approach to supporting school psychologists' self-care. And it seems like it's emphasized throughout the year. But also, I love the theme of having it, the theme of December, the theme of the month for December. And I have a few theories as to why you maybe chose December. It is a very busy time with the holidays. It's kind of cold in Boston in December. But is there a specific reason why you chose December of all the months?
Yeah, you named it. And Tim did work with us in Boston, so we're very honored to have him work with us now. But December's a rough month in schools. You know, a lot of people have a lot of big feelings around the holidays. It's that kind of not quite, but halfway through the year, and we're getting tired, and we all have so much to do at home in December. And so how do we make sure we're taking care of people at that low? And so it's been very well received because we combine, it always has to be an interactive PD. It's not a sit and get. It's like learn something and go play. So here's 20 games that you could do. Let's go play 20 games and learn how we can find moments of joy. And then we eat together and create community. So
That's wonderful.
December, yeah, I think we could start something new on Said No Schools Like Ever, Amber, of like December, getting over that hump or surviving
Yeah.
the holidays, or
Surviving the holidays, right? It's a
for the
stressful,
people that
busy time.
celebrate. Yeah.
Take some inspiration from Boston Public Schools because I think we need to make that happen. I do love too how you're emphasizing personal and professional self-care because there is a difference, and both are very important. That's good that you're supporting your staff in a way where they're getting that professional development and they're finding moments of joy, but they're doing it with the people that are in the trenches with them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you raise a good point, Amber. Sorry, Tim, I know you're ready for the next question, but
No,
Amber
you're good.
reminded me that we share district resources and city resources for employees, like employee wellness program. But one thing we've learned through the years is you can't make someone do self-care, right? So I can teach you yoga and mindfulness, and I can give you the city app for being well. I encourage people to take time off. Like your mental health is a sick day if you need it. Taking care of your children, if you need it, family comes first. So you can support it, but at the end of the day, we as individuals have to take responsibility for building those practices and taking care of ourselves. And that's kind of hard for an administrator because you're like, I want to make people do self-care because I want them to be happy and I want them to be well. And at the end of the day, I had to come to the realization is like, we have to set up the systems and the structures and provide the support and the PD. But then I think it's one of our professional responsibilities, and we're all school psychs on this podcast, to figure out what works for you and do it.
That's right. Everyone's self-care looks a little different. Not everyone is doing a bubble bath. Not everyone is doing yoga. It's really a very personal journey when it comes to self-care. But I want to shift gears to national advocacy and leadership because you've both done so much work, so much volunteer work, so much leadership work and advocacy for NASP. Starting with you, Amber, do you want to talk about the ways you've been involved with NASP and the different things that you've advocated for, the ways that you've been involved with NASP, and then just talking about how for school psychologists who are interested in being a national leader, how they could be involved as well. Go ahead, Amber.
Yeah, there's so many opportunities. I even encourage my graduate students in my program here, to get involved. And a lot of them are like, I don't know about that because they have that imposter syndrome. But we need early career. We need grad students. We need seasoned practitioners. We need people that are coming to the table with all of these different lenses. So I don't care where you're at in your career, your input matters and it can be very valuable. I got started in state leadership because, to be honest, I was actually critical of my state leadership. It was like, what are y'all doing about this shortage, right? What are we doing about the ratio? Fix it. And so I thought, if I'm going to complain about it, I need to get involved in it. And leadership, they hook you in. They'll hook you in, and then you're sucked in for life. But not really. I'm just kidding. But I did end up starting out as like a committee position, and then end up being president of my state association in 2016. And the more that I learned about the shortages issue is that it was multifaceted. So as I say, it's an onion. There's lots of layers to this. One of the layers is that we have a shortage of graduate trainers. We have a shortage of districts like Boston Public Schools that are so willing to take on our students and provide good supervision. And that we know that the better foundation that they get, the more likely that we're going to retain those students in the field, and they're not going to leave after 3 to 5 years to go be a realtor. I don't know why, but if you follow the page, that's like the common field exit strategy. And so it's been a wild ride, but I've really enjoyed it. I feel like I have learned a lot professionally and personally that has shaped me into being a leader in other spaces outside of school psychology. Like I've done a lot of work around autism advocacy in my state and gotten some legislation changed for the better. But yeah, I get involved at your state level first. Get involved in your district first. How can you step up and do some micro volunteering opportunities where you just get your foot in the door and also kind of get to see behind the curtain, of what it means to be involved in leadership and, how the whole advocacy process works. And there's tons of micro volunteering opportunities. If you feel like you can't take on a whole role, that's okay, because there's lots of little things that you can get involved in at the state or the national. So started out, like I said, in a committee position, became state president, ended up serving 6 years as the delegate for the state of Louisiana, which is where I met your fearless leader here. And that's another part of the benefit of getting involved in leadership is the connections that you make. You will create lifelong friends. When you go through something hard together, there is that bonding. Maybe it might be a little bit of trauma bonding, but there is a little bit of bonding, right? And so when you're serving with these people and you're advocating for the same things and you're spending hours doing, working on different initiatives, naturally you're going to develop some relationships out of that. And I'm very fortunate to have a network of school site friends across the country that I have, acquired over the years being involved in my state and also in NASP. So I do currently serve as our treasurer in NASP. I was the Southeast delegate rep on the board for a little bit, and I don't know when I'm going to be done, but I feel like I got a few more years left in me that I want to give back to the profession. So if you feel like things are just not going well, it's really hard to fight a lot of these things by yourself, but you can do so much more through collective advocacy. So get involved in your state, get involved in your national association. Check if you're interested in getting involved in NASP. We do a want ad process. And so if you read like your NASP in brief, you'll see want ads in there often about different committee positions. And just reach out to your state delegate, reach out to Andria. She knows people she can put you in contact with to find out about different opportunities as they come down the line.
Absolutely. Andrea, do you want that? First of all, fantastic work, Amber. I mean, I didn't realize you were also a state president. I just thought it was just delegate for Louisiana, and then all the work you did nationally. So I didn't realize you're also
president when NASP came to New Orleans.
New Orleans. That's right.
Yes, and they don't tell you when you run for president that you have to get up. I don't know why it didn't dawn on me before then, but you have to get up and give the welcome. tell everybody at the before they do the keynote. And I've never been more terrified in my entire life.
Wow.
So,
You were in front of all those people. That's amazing. Good for
get
you.
involved, but not the year that NASP is in your. I'm just kidding. Get involved anytime. Just don't be president the year NASP is coming to your state. If you have any fear of public speaking, that would be
Right,
one
right,
to
right. That's
avoid.
about 3,000 people in the room there, so I give you a lot of credit. Um, and Andrea, when were you president of MISPA? Because I think we might have all been president at the same time. Because I was president of NASP in 2016. Andrea, were you president of MISPA in
Oh,
2016?
geez, I'm terrible with dates, but it was around the same time.
I think we
Yeah.
were all president around the same time. That's awesome. Anyways, go ahead, Andrea. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about your leadership experience and advocacy?
Yeah. So Tim did train here in Boston, but worked in Nevada. So we have to share him. Um, so my journey is similar to Amber's, where I started doing leadership within my department, knowing we needed better PD. As a school psych, I started with my peer a PD committee so we could get better PD. And then from there became an administrator and knew I needed help because no one's trained to be an administrator. So I became involved with my state association, ran PD for them, became the president, then the delegate like Amber, delegate rep. Amber and I served on the NASP practice model committee together. And that was one of my favorite things I've done with NASP in terms of volunteer work, because I think the practice model has changed. I know the practice model has changed my life, the lives of the school psychologist in Boston, and many school psychologists across the nation. So that committee does such pivotal work in helping redefine the field of school psychology. So practice model committee was a very rewarding experience with a lot of great folks from around the country. And then Amber and I had the pleasure of serving as delegate reps for the same time. And so I think the connection to our earlier conversation about self-care and community comes clear with volunteerism, because being part of my state association and NASP has been the single most important thing to make me a better leader, a better school psychologist, a better human. Like to find your community and to give back and grow, because you get to talk to people from around the country with different lived experiences, different religions, different values, different educational systems, helps you really open your worldview and start to think about all of the nation's kids and all of education, and how can we make things better in our field for everyone, as well as school psychologists in urban districts. I've always worked in an urban district, to our school psychologist in rural districts, like places I grew up where there was one school psychologist for the entire district, and the district was the largest land district east of the Mississippi, and it had one school psychologist. And so, NASP allows you to look at the whole community and say, how are we going to help all kids and all school psychologists? So giving back has given as much to me as I've given to NASP and to my state association. And like Amber, we still are involved with our state associations and NASP, because for me, it's this continuum of what am I doing as an individual to create community and be the best professional I can be? What am I doing with my state association to make my state a great place? What am I doing at NASP? And then, of course, I bring it home to my work. So what am I doing in Boston Public Schools to ensure that my school staff have that sense of community and the professional support they need? So I, like Amber, would encourage everyone to get involved. If you're nervous about it, start with your state association. There are people just like you working in communities, and they're doing stuff that's helping their school psychs and running conferences and having events. But NASP has many wonderful events that have low-level lifts that people can support. But we need you now more than ever. The field of school psychology is evolving. We all know that there's a lot of things happening at the federal level with education, and we need everyone's voice and advocacy to continue to move this work forward to make sure we can support students and school psych.
Absolutely. That's the one thing I hear over and over again. When people get involved and volunteer at the state and the national level, it reinvigorates their passion for school psychologists because they're surrounded by passionate school psychologists. So it is absolutely great advice if you're feeling a little bit burnt out from the profession. Getting around a lot of different passionate school psychologists who are trying to make a difference on the things that maybe are causing this burnout, such as the shortages, such as all of these different difficulties and challenges that school psychologists are facing, is absolutely great advice to get involved. So thank you so much, both of you, for being such great leaders and such great public servants by doing this work, because it is obviously challenging, but it's also rewarding as well. Amber, did you want to talk a little bit about NASP Treasurer and your experience there as kind of one of our final questions? I wanted to hear a little bit more about your experience now as a NASP leader on, is it the executive board of NASP?
Well, I'm still learning. I joke, I should still get like one of those pins, you see like the waitresses wear that's like, forgive me, I'm new, or be patient with me, I'm new. So this is a very new role to me, and I'm still very much in the learning curve of that role, but happy to serve for the next 3 years in that position to make sure that we do have fiscal accountability and we're financially solvent, so that we can continue to do the work that we do. Because I feel like the advocacy piece is just so huge. We need our national association to be around for a long time to be able to advocate for us collectively.
Absolutely. And Andrea, you've done a lot of advocacy work around budgeting and more school psychologists in Boston Public Schools. If you want to touch upon that before we end.
I'll give a shout out to Kelly Valancourt and the incredible work that she and NASP did to get federal funding for school psychology to address the shortages that Amber was talking about. And it's a great example of how getting involved helps us come up with the solutions and advocate for the solutions we need back at the local level. And so Kelly was able to secure funding so districts could apply. Our district was lucky that we were the recipients of the grant. Most of those grants went to universities or collaboratives, not to individual school districts, but we were eligible and received the grant because we have all the structures in place to be able to do that work. We have a robust training program. We have a research committee within our department. So we have school psychs doing research to practice gap research in the district. And I raised that to say the practice model is where it all comes together. And that's why Amber and I just love the practice model, because it creates the systems and supports that the district needs so the school psychs can do the 10 domains found in the practice model. And so we started with 48 school psychologists and almost 60,000 students. And we adopted the practice model. And it sounds counterintuitive. And Amber and I get to present to people around the country on the practice model and other things. And I always get people saying, I'm already overworked. Why would I want to have a bigger role? And it does sound counterintuitive, but by showing our school leaders the range of skills school psychs could do, when we began to advocate for more school psychs, we weren't doing it alone. We had school leaders saying, I want more school psych time, because they're not just testing, which school leaders felt like was special ed's job. They're running student support teams. They're doing PD for my staff. They're doing consultation. They lead our universal screening. They are implementing MTSS and Tier 1 interventions. And so though it does sound counterindicated, I would encourage everyone to take on one new skill, one new task, even if it's small and manageable. And then next year you build another new skill. And I know some of my friends from Maine have talked about this, that they slowly carve out an expanded role, which then helps them advocate for more resources, which then makes the job easier. So I know it, like being burnt out while you're going to volunteer for NASP, that sounds counterintuitive. It's not. Invigorates you, gets you excited again about the work, and the practice model is the same. Adopting it and providing more skills not only makes you feel invigorated again, it helps you advocate for more resources. And so we've used the practice model to go from 48 school psychologists to 105. We've used the practice model and doing everything in it to go from having 0 students to having 50 graduate students every year, to go from having only school psychs doing assessments all the time to our data shows school psychologists are doing assessments 30 to 40% of their time, which is a big difference for most people who are doing assessment 100% of their time. And so the practice model has helped us advocate in all of these ways. And I'll give a shout out to the SBS model program. Amber and I were part of the practice model committee that developed it and implemented it. And it's NASP's award and recognition system for school psychologists who want to adopt the practice model. And it's really important because even if you don't think that you're doing everything right, you should still apply because it's a great learning experience. And many districts have used the results from their ESPS application to then advocate for what they need to expand practice or support their school psychs. So I know I put a lot in there, but at the end of the day, it all comes back to the practice model.
Absolutely. And congratulations on such an effective job advocating in the Boston Public Schools. And to shed a little bit more detail with the ESPS award, it was the top tier award that Boston Public Schools received, the exemplary status that only 4 school districts have obtained. And I did want to clarify, because you did say you were awarded this big grant, national grant at the beginning of your answer. And you said most of those recipients went to universities or hospitals, companies, but it just so happened that Boston Public Schools also was a recipient. And so what made Boston Public Schools stand out as a district that was able to receive this grant when most school districts weren't able to get something like this?
Again, I credit the practice model because if you look at the practice model, it tells you all of the essential functions and services that you need in place for school psychs to be successful. Those are the same kind of things that federal grants want to see. Do you have expertise? Are you good at collecting data? Can you do research and disseminate and aggregate that data? Do you have partnerships? Obviously, we have that. Do you have training programs? Are you able to take these funds, implement them as designed and report back on them? So the practice model was a big part of it, but I'll kind of end as we wrap up with what we started with, which was communication, because one of the key things that we've learned is that we have to focus on communicating. And I think this applies to any school psychologist, regardless of your district or your role. We as a profession have to make sure people understand what we do and why it's important. And one of my mentors and professional heroes is Maurice Elias out of Rutgers. And Maurice once said to me, Andria, you're speaking to the choir. You have to be able to communicate your message to people who don't agree with you or don't understand. And that really, he was talking about something very specific, but it really helped me kind of open my mind and pivot my communication. So instead of always speaking about our work the way I would talk to Tim or Amber or another school psych, I have to be able to talk about my work and its value to parents, to maybe people in the budget, maybe people in the federal grants office or in a private foundation. And so we've really started to focus a lot on communication. We got a logo for ourselves and we have a brand kit, if you will. We learned how to do elevator pitches. We worked with Mass College of Art to have printed communication materials. We've been trained by a consultant on how to get our message out to people. And now we have what we call a communication package. So whenever we're communicating about a topic, whether it's a PD, so for example, we're training all school psychologists in DBT at Tier 3. So we're going to come out with a fact sheet, a training, a podcast is in the works, a practice paper, a professional practice paper, so that we're taking a topic that school psychs are expert in, and everyone listening has an expertise in something, and we're communicating that in a really in-depth communication package so all of our stakeholders can access that and understand why we're doing it and why it's important. And the more people that understand that, the better we'll be able to advocate. So to to bring it back to the grant, we were able to submit a grant application that shows an annual report, a website, fact sheets, data, because we've been building that all along. So it's another example of how someone can kind of let others know what they do. And communication can both create community, but it can also help with understanding.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for clarifying that. And I want to end on something fun. And so I was wondering if we wanted to do a travel-themed fun fact, starting with you, Amber. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, as you can see behind me in my very messy office, I have a poster of the United States with lots of push pins in it. And my fun fact is that I have been to every state in the continental U.S. With my 3 boys in a car with 3 boys. So not flying, but we actually drove and road trip, camped in most of those states, and visited all of those states. And I use this map as a recruitment tool because when I have students come to my office and they're trying to figure out what grad program to go into, and they ask me, why school psychology? Among many of the reasons that I can give about the field, I will also plug and say, and we're off in the summers. So I've actually been to all of those places that stand on that map. And we work hard, but we play hard too. So
That's right.
You're okay.
That map is a great advocacy tool and so cool that you visited all 50 states. That's truly incredible. Andrea, do you have a...
So 48.
Sorry?
48 in the continental U.S. I haven't met
48, I get it.
Hawaii and Alaska yet. I haven't with my kids. If I took them to the 48, they have to take me to the last 2. So
Got it.
Still waiting on them to come through.
Still waiting.
They have to graduate first, right?
That's funny. Andrea, do you want to tell us your travel fun fact?
Sure. Travel is my passion. So we should do a podcast of places school psychs travel to. That would be fun. I'm going to do kind of 2 fun facts in one. Like Amber likes driving. I hate driving. So I travel on a plane. And my first fun fact is my daughter worked for a while for American Airlines. And so parent tip for all the parents listening, make one of your children work for American Airlines because then you as a parent get to travel for free and you can even fly first class. So my first fun fact was I had a week's vacation and I packed my suitcase with warm weather clothes and went to the airport not knowing where I was going. When I got there, I wanted to see where was a first class seat that I could go for free. And I ended up for a week in Australia.
Wow.
So that was my first fun fact. I got to fly free to Australia. And then my second was my husband is obsessed with the World Cup. I am obsessed with travel. So we traveled to all the World Cups and we had a great time traveling to Qatar. And it was so exciting for me because I've never been to that part of the world. And I got to have so many new experiences. And that was awesome. And then I could come back and flex to people who like the World Cup. Well, oh, yeah, I was at the World Cup. But truth be told, I do have fun at the World Cup, but I just love to travel. So those are my 2 fun facts.
That is so cool. And just to clarify, you went to Australia for a week and didn't know you were going to Australia for a week?
No, it was fun. It's really fun. Yeah.
That is so cool. And yes, I backpacked through Europe as a 18, 19-year-old in college with 4 college friends, but we did know where we were going beforehand. And we did not travel first class. We traveled Ryanair, which I'm not sure if you've done Ryanair, but they treat you like, yeah, it's the spirit of air of Europe. They treat you like cattle. I think you have to like have a ladder just to climb in. And they're like, we don't do snacks here. You get the bare minimum. But anyways, it was a great, great time backpacking through Europe.
Tim, that you like to walk on vacation. Amber drives and I fly. So
yes, that's correct. That's correct.
The next podcast will be about sailing because we haven't had that mode of vacation transportation.
Amber, thank you so much for joining us. Do you want to close on any kind of words of wisdom before we wrap this up?
For those that, I guess, I want to go back to that advocacy piece. If you think that getting involved won't matter, or you think your individual effort won't matter, it does. I just really want to encourage you to rethink that because from the time that I got started in NASP leadership just a few short years ago, to now, our national ratio has went from about 1 to 1,400 plus to 1 to 1,065, I think is the current one. And that's a big needle move in just a short amount of time. Now, I didn't do that alone, but I do feel like I had a little piece of that because I worked with all of these other volunteer leaders, everybody doing their part to raise awareness for the field, to work on recruitment, retention issues. So yes, it does matter. You can make a difference, especially whenever you try to do it with others.
Thank you so much, Amber. A great message that advocacy is so important and it starts with the individual. And so your work is so important. Thank you for listening to the Conversations with Boston School Psychologists, building safe and supportive schools, one conversation at a time. Please follow us on our socials, Boston School Psychs, and visit our website, bostonschoolpsychs.com, to learn more about our work. Join our next conversation to learn more about resources and tips for creating safe and supportive schools. Thank you so much.